This week, International Women's Day came and went, but with many complaining that so-called gender ideology, which challenges the idea of biological sex, is ultimately erasing women altogether. There's talk of the Oscars becoming gender neutral. The Labour MP Jess Phillips read out a list of women murdered by men this year, but included a trans woman on the list. And in the White House, Dr. Jill Biden, the wife of the president, handed out a Courageous Woman of the Year award to a biological male who identifies as female. Is this progress, or is it setting women back decades? To discuss this and some of the other big stories of the day, I'm delighted to welcome Nicole Lampert, who has written for The Metro, The Jewish Chronicle and The New York Post. Hi, Nicole.
Hello.
Great to have you on the show. Did you raise an eyebrow when you saw Jess Phillips making her statement, making her speech in the House of Commons, including a trans woman?
I did. I felt quite sorry for her, though, because I think whatever happened, she couldn't get it right or wrong. And it's awful that this list became the centre of the kind of culture wars.
Because what she was doing, it wasn't a bad thing, drawing attention to anyone that's been murdered.
It's a brilliant thing, because every year she reads out a list of all the women that have died at the hands of men. And for often it's the only chance that they're kind of named publicly. She invites their families to come and listen to her. And it's a kind of public acknowledgement of the problems that women still have in terms of violence against women, and the fact that between 2 and 3 women are killed every week by a man, often by one she knows.
And so props to her for drawing attention to these horrific, appalling and tragic crimes. However, the likes of feminist campaigner Kelly J. Keane has said that this was political opportunism, and this list of women tragically murdered did not justify the inclusion of a trans woman. Of course, that's somebody that's a biological male who identifies as female. Well,
the inclusion of the girl that died, the trans girl that died, it was controversial for several reasons, and one of them is that the femicide list is for women who've been killed by men, and proceedings are still active in terms of who murdered this child, but the 2 people that have been charged with it are a boy and a girl who are both children themselves. So it's not the same as the other murders, and the sad thing is that this row over it has completely taken over the whole list, the whole reason for the list.
Indeed. I mean, some people are just saying, can't women have their own list for something? I mean, you've got Dr. Jill Biden handing out Courageous Women of the Year awards in the White House to, again, somebody that's a biological intact male who identifies as female. It's a difficult conversation to have because you don't want to come across or be characterised as transphobic. At the same time, I'm just wondering where we go with this and what's going to happen to women and their hard-fought rights.
It feels a bit like International Women's Day has almost become International Trans Women Day, in that there are hardly any trans women. If you look at how many there are in the country, there's probably 100,000, 200,000. But they're being put front and centre of every International Women's Day advert and awards, things like that. And that does feel like, can't women just have one day? And it's fine if trans women should enjoy International Women's Day as much as other women, but they don't have to be front and centre of it all, because it just feels like for women who don't believe trans women are the same as other women, it feels offensive. Speaking of which,
gender-neutral Oscars, is that progress?
Definitely not. As we've seen with the Brits, that it just means that there's less women that are going to be nominated. Just like in the music industry, the film industry has a problem with women. I don't think there's only been 2 female directors, or maybe only 1 that have ever won an Oscar. So if they do this, then we will see less women on the list.
Are you looking forward to the Oscars?
Not really.
I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Of course, let's remind ourselves of what happened last year, Nicole. The infamous slap. Take it away, Cal.
Oh, wow! Wow!
I think we might have the response from Chris Rock, the comedian. Chris Rock just released a stand-up comedy special. Have we got that, Cal? Hope I'm not...
It happened. I got smacked like a year ago. And a lot of people go, Chris, how come you didn't do nothing back? How come you didn't do nothing back that night? I got parents. And you know what my parents taught me? Don't fight. right in front of white people.
Absolutely hilarious. The question is, was that slap good or bad for the Oscars, Nicole?
I think it's seen as bad. I think it was good because the Oscars have got so boring. And you were talking about Gary Lineker, and of course, the Oscars celebrities, when they win awards, they want to go and spout their political stuff. And that's been a massive turn-off every year. Oscars, there are fewer and fewer people watch the Oscars.
Yeah.
So
I mean, what they need is they need Ricky Gervais as host, don't they?
Well, exactly. That's kind of what that's kind of what Chris Rock was doing, in that he was roasting the celebrities, and it was quite funny. But then, of course, this mad moment, a kind of one-in-a-generation moment where he gets hit for what he says, is quite astounding.
It's a shocker. Has it permanently damaged Will Smith's career? I mean, is Smith's career over as a result of the slap? I
don't think it's over. It probably has damaged it, and we certainly see the human behind the man, which is both good and bad. We know how hurt he is, and he's shown that hurt in the aggression that he's shown on TV.
Does it demonstrate how bonkers these people in Hollywood are?
Well, maybe just that they are normal.
We're supposed to envy them, aren't we?
But we are meant to envy them. I think this is part of the problem with the Oscars, that we kind of know these celebrities and who they are now because they do reality shows, they're on Instagram, they're telling us their points of view all the time. So the magic of the Oscars has disappeared.
I think that's a really, really fair point. I mean, it was always this venerated showbiz occasion with dancers and singers and amazing glitter and pomp. And now, as you say, it's just an ego fest and quite controversial. Isn't another problem that people don't watch movies in the numbers they used to, that it's all Netflix and box set series?
Well, there's that, but people do watch movies, but they watch all the Marvel films. They're kind of easy to make, they don't require much thought, and they do really well at the box office, and that's the problem. So they've kind of increased the category of Best Picture so that they do at least have some box office hits. So Avatar was one of the biggest hits in the box office, and that's a Best Film category, but it probably won't win. So the problem is, do you remember the days of Titanic where you had the Best Film was also the most popular film of the year? And that's really unlikely to happen. And that's partly to do with the streaming services. So people and of course the pandemic had a massive impact. But people, if they're going to spend their money to go to the cinema, then they want to see something special.
Last but not least, I know you're not the biggest fan of the government's forthcoming legislation on migration and the migrant crisis, but what's your reaction to Gary Lineker's invoking of the Second World War and the Holocaust into the debate?
I'm really unhappy with it. I'm just unhappy with anyone that invokes the Holocaust. And although people say he's not invoking the Holocaust, but 1930s Germany, you don't need to talk about that because of what it led to. But he's not talking about the historical... There are so many historical factors that went into the Holocaust, not least thousands of years of anti-Semitism. So if he wanted to invoke something, he could have invoked the fact that when Jewish people were trying to escape from the Nazis, many countries, including Britain, closed their doors.
Yeah, which is the most tragic and awful stain on our history. You are a Jewish person, Jewish journalist. So, I mean, how do you think that this story has gone down within the Jewish community? Have you got your sort of finger on the pulse as to how it's been received? Because it seems to be these days that Hitler gets invoked in a lot of debates, especially if the other side don't agree with the point being made. Well,
they kind of say, if you have to invoke Hitler or the Nazis, then you've already lost the argument. Because something has to be really terrible to be compared to that. And it has to be something really evil. And if you keep invoking things that aren't that, if you keep saying things like the Tories are Nazis, then you're actually denigrating what happened in the Holocaust and what happened to not only to Jewish people, but also what the Nazis did to many other minority groups.
Absolutely. Look, it's been a thrill to have you in the studio.
Thank you for having me.
Come and see us again really soon. I promise you more jolly stories next time.
Thank you.
The news agenda, pretty dark tonight, I think you'll agree.